Welcome back to the kitchen project. Very excited for this episode. We're going to be getting into a lot of the trim work, which once a lot of the stuff is installed, the space is going to feel significantly more complete. So in the last few episodes on making trim, installing, we've made a bunch of other pieces that can't go in yet. And as of right now, they still can't go in. I'm waiting for this hutch to be finished. I'm waiting on myself to finish this hutch. And then the other hutch in the pantry. And once those are in, the countertop folks can come back, finish their install, and then I can start installing trim. But I have some time this morning, and I'm thinking forward. And there's a few pieces of trim that I need to make that they're still on the list that I'm going to need, so I can kind of run through a huge chunk of install all at once. And that's just going to be a few pieces here in the pantry, so that when we get in here, we can just install all of it and basically be pretty much done with trim in this one room. So in here we have the V paneling wainscot trim boards that go on the wall and kind of wrap all the way around. We made those in the last trim episode, as well as the baseboard, which goes in here too. And then we made the casings and everything for the window and for the door over there. So we have all that stuff. The only thing I'm missing is the wainscot cap rail and then the actual I don't know what you want to call it, the wall cap board. So if I come over to this call out here, you can see they've called out 4 inches from the bottom of the cap to the top of where this Cove molding is going to start. So I need to make this tall enough to receive that Cove. That Cove is 3/4 of an inch, so this backer board here is going to be 4 3/4 inches tall. And then for the actual cap, they want the whole thing to be 2 inches with that Cove molding on it, which is 3/4. So this thing here, which you'll see, should be 1 1/4 thick or tall or whatever. And for the depth of this rail, it's going to be the thickness of this cap piece, which is going to be 7/8, plus the width of the Cove mold, which is 3/4, plus a little bit of a reveal, probably 1/4 inch. So I believe this is going to be 1 7/8 by 1 1/4 thick. I'm just going to add these up so I don't mess this up. Yes, 1 1/4 tall by 1 7/8 wide for that cap piece. So let's go make those 2 parts. Cut this groove in here so that on the top of the paneling I can pop some dominoes literally anywhere, and then they just kind of nest together and are self-aligning, and I have some actual real connection in here. The alignment on the baseboards we did with a rabbet, and that makes a lot of sense on the cap mold because that big piece can just kind of go on, and you don't have to really worry about a whole lot. On paneling, I think this makes a lot more sense. And I probably should have done this on the baseboards for the pantry because there's no cap mold that those baseboards receive. The baseboard receives paneling as well, but I think this would be a little bit nicer and a little bit cleaner for the top part. I can use fewer nails. I don't have to worry about pin nailing 2 rabbets together to keep them from separating until the glue dries. And I'll have some actual real glue surface to get it up in there. And I don't have to worry about left to right position alignment with the domino, because the reference face is going to be the back edge, the back face, because they're flush on the back, and there's 1/8 of an inch step, which I guess I could do with an offset on the fence, but fewer things to worry about setting up correctly, the better. So that's it for these few pieces. They're going to have to paint, and then we'll I'll see you up in the kitchen and do some install. Okay, there's our stack of stuff from the paint shop, all ready to be installed. This front window bay thing can't be done yet. The stone guys came back and they were gonna set the sills and the riser, but they're a little too thick to slide in there, so that's not in there yet. But the backsplashes in here are installed, so that means that we can do all the trim in the pantry. I'm gonna start on this back wall because this windowsill establishes the height for the wainscot cap, which then establishes, the length of all the V-groove panels. One little weird thing here is that the casing establishes this, but then in order to notch the casing for the cap rail, the casing will have to come off. So I'm going to install those casings first, sort of temporarily. I'm going to use the domino like I did on the other casings and jams to set my offsets from my jam 3/16. That way I can pull that casing on and off the wall and it'll go back in exactly the same spot. Okay, so those casings now indexed where they're going to be with the dominoes, and I just cut some dominoes to join the head casing on to make sure that was all going to work out, and that size that I made that to is correct, which is always a nice plus. So next I'm going to move on to installing the wainscot cap, which is all these pieces we made before. And I have my lasers set up so I'm in line with the bottom of the sill. My sill's a little out of level, so I'm going to go off of the points here that kind of hit, and then this one's going to be a little bit out, but it doesn't really matter a whole lot. I don't think it's going to matter. Anyway, I'm going to mark my studs, and I'll cut and fit these guys to go all the way around the room and get them installed. I already did these two. Okay, with those rails installed, I'm going to switch gears a little bit and install some of this paneling. So I set up the paneling with the even spacing, even spacing for this wall to be first, and then for these outside walls to go into it. So these start and stop board are wider, the thickness of the paneling over there, so you end up with even pieces across the corner. That's all to say that I'm just going to install these first few here, and then to do all these, I'll install the baseboard. But I'm just going to throw these couple boards in first, and then I can do this whole back section up into the cabinet. And of course, it wouldn't be anything if I didn't have to remove all the electrical, so that one's got to move, and this one also has to move over as well. And I also need to dig into this wall here and find the wire for the thermostat, which we should have punched through the drywall on the other side before, but it is coiled up somewhere up there. So we're gonna make a big hole and stick our arm up in there and try and pull that wire back down too. So this should be fun, but at least running through this will kind of use up a bunch of material and make the space look more complete very quickly. Okay, are you ready to hear about a detail that's not gonna work out? This window is supposed to be centered in the paneling or whatever. The lines are supposed to be centered, which is not gonna happen. I didn't notice that until I started over there. I hadn't thought about that before, but I would have had to move this window over that way when I set this, when I did the sunroom, to actually get that to work out. And I guess to my own, I don't know, make myself feel a little better, I couldn't have easily just moved my jambs over. I'm gonna be off by about an inch out of center because I think they're pretty well tight to the framing anyway. This opening should have been framed, like all the openings should have been framed a lot wider than they were to give a lot more play side to side. The only way I could have fixed this now would be to put like a 7-inch wide piece here, which I think would look even more kind of ridiculous. So I'm kind of just gonna go with it. So we're gonna be off center by about an inch, which, whatever. I'm not gonna worry about it at this point. Okay, so as I work around here, I just gotta get this piece scrapped around the sill, and then we can move on. I have a offcut of the sill that I can use as a template once I know how far over it needs to go. Quarters, so 11/16. All right, so here is the baseboard all ready to go and get attached. I got it set parallel to the cap rail with those shims and then scribed it in. So now with these two parallel, all my pieces of paneling will be the same length. Trying to make it easier for myself than like them diverging and like the paneling has to get longer as you go or shorter as you go. So we just cut them all the same length and they're all, just go right in. So I'm gonna get this secured and then we'll get this piece of paneling in, which is gonna get notched around all the stuff up here. Okay, on to the last piece of paneling on this long wall. And I have a few mistakes to share with you. So first off, all of these panels are too wide. They are supposed to have 6 inches of coverage. But what I did somehow in my mind when I was making them is I made the distance between the V's 6 inches. It doesn't account for the actual gap between them. So this is supposed to be an even spacing all the way down. But as you can see, we've got a narrow rip here at the end, which I wasn't really planning on having. However, at this point in the project, I guess I don't really care because this is behind a door and you probably won't ever see this, so at least it looks good over here. And then the other thing that I messed up is I had the saw tipped at some angle I was trying to cut, and I didn't check it when I walked back over there, so now this one's got this nice big gap in here that I guess the painter will fix, but it's just annoying because I'm like, the last piece, and of course I miscut it, and now it's too short, and it's got a missing corner, and it looks stupid, but I guess that's why the painter gets paid the big bucks. Make me look good. Done. Okay, so with that done, I'm going to move on to the back side of this door here. Get the same kind of setup. We get the full casings to get kind of set in place, because again, they'll have to come off to do the cap rail thing and all that. So this little baby wall here is going to be just like the window wall, just with longer casings. I'm going to take a pause from doing paneling right now because I've changed my mind, like always. So when I made the paneling and laid all the sizes, for whatever reason, I thought for here would be two 6-inch pieces and a remainder, which would be a 2-inch piece. Which, like being in here now, I think that will look kind of stupid. So what I'm going to do is just have this be 2 pieces, so it'll be 14 inches. So I have 7-inch V-groove boards. And what I'll do there is I'll just add an inch to each piece to the straight side, and then we'll install them. So I'll go do that as an aside, and then we'll come back to this section later. Funny enough, this was laid out in the plans to be 2 6-inch pieces, but when we got in here, we removed the exterior wall, which ran here. This is the exterior corner of the original house, so our beam is sitting right in here. We had all kinds of electrical and plumbing that had to get rerouted and we needed some more room in this wall for those. So we furred out that wall 2 inches because, yeah, whatever, who's going to miss 2 inches in the pantry? Well, now is where it all comes up, because now my trim details don't work exactly as drawn in the plans, which is how the wall is supposed to look with 2 6-inch pieces on that return wall. So I'm going to switch to adding the caps. I already cut and fit these guys to give you an idea. So we have that thicker top piece, and then we have a 3/4 inch Cove molding which goes beneath it. So this is kind of the easy one. The other ones here, they're going to come into this casing. So the Cove mold is supposed to wrap around or end or terminate on the cap rail, and then the actual cap piece comes around and returns back into the wall. One thing that kind of is going to be a little bit weird is that if I return the Cove mold right at the end of the cap rail, it's going to intersect this bead, and the casing is going to be coped around all this stuff in the middle of the bead, which I think is going to look kind of messy. So I'm going to make this maybe a little bit weirder, is I'm actually going to return the Cove mold back from this point here, which extends past the end of the rail about, I don't know, 1/8 to 3/16 of an inch. So I'm going to take this casing out of here. This is where it would normally return back to the wall. We're going to return it back right around here, and then the actual cap will sit somewhere around there. So, and then we can start coping the casings in. But I'm going to install all of this Cove mold and all of these cap rails first, and then we can deal with actually notching the casings around those pieces. Okay, I'm gonna get these casings, with side casings and the head casings installed and finalized for real, and then I believe we're pretty much done in here from now. As usual, I lied. We have a half-inch cove which goes under the sill and transitions the paneling to the sill detail, just like in the sunroom. So we'll get this cut to length, add the returns, and slap it on here, and then we should be done in here for now. Okay, there is that all wrapped up. Here's how it looks from this side. So we'll come back in here and we'll install these 4 pieces of paneling later. I got them down in the shop. But now I'm going to move on to this wall over here and start getting these cased openings installed. So the first thing I want to do is just finalize the position of this cabinet left to right. I just have it sitting up here, and I have been waiting until I did this to finalize it and lock it into place. Because in theory, I made these 2 pieces the same width, so they should align, but one could be shifted more to the left or right or whatever. So I just have these standoff blocks on my straight edge. And this is showing me that with these 2 touching up here, I am about 1/8 of an inch gapped. So I got to go that way in theory. Let's see what this side says. This side says the same thing. Someone messed up the cabinets. Just a little bit. So we're gonna have a little cock seam with this. I'm just gonna do my best to eyeball it. That side's got a little bit of a bigger gap than this side, I think. Yes, a little bit bigger. So we'll shift this a little bit and then we'll call it good. Just shimming out the wall here where the header is thinner or narrower than the thickness of the wall, and that's just with some thin piece of plywood and some drywall shims. So when I attach the band board, it actually goes on nice and flat. I'll also use some dominoes in the bottom of the band board that goes into the head casing to keep that offset consistent, so as you're looking down that line, the 1/4 inch offset between the 2 pieces is nice and consistent. And again, when we made the head casings and the band boards this time, the band boards are made out of something narrower because I'm going to fur them out from the wall, because you're not going to see the full thickness of that band board anywhere in this arrangement, because the head casing covers the entire bottom edge, or minus that 1/4 inch you'll see, of the band board. now to start getting the head casings in, I need to fur down the head a little bit so I have somewhere to actually attach that head casing to. So this double up 2x4 is going to work out perfectly for that. And this is the old pair of jack studs that I pulled out of this opening when I made it wider back whenever that was. Of course, that was too much. There's not enough room for the jam now. All right, bandboard, head casing, top jam, and then this casing here is cut to length. For the jams, the side jams, what I'm kind of thinking of doing is putting them in, but then leaving them loose and not having them actually be a hard stop for like painting and everything, so that in the future when I do the flooring in here and I add this transition for real in here, I can remove the jams, get the floor set in, and then put the jams in for real. There might be a discrepancy in the elevations here, or something or whatever. If I install them for real now, the only way to get that transition would be to slide it in this way. So I could only add that transition piece while I'm doing the floor. I can't be like, oh, maybe I want to add it now and just slap one in. So that's what I'm leaning to on the jams here. This one we'll do in a second because it's got to get this situation figured out. On this one here, I can't install any of the jams yet until this opening actually gets opened up and the sheetrock is cut through. So I'll prep the casings to receive all the jams before they go in, and then we will install those at the very end before we do all the painting. And I open up this hole, which will disturb our current kitchen. So I'm going to get this casing here, cut the length and set, and I'll probably just prep that jam and get it ready to go in, or get it roughed in or whatever with that casing. And then we can work on the ones that are going to hit the cabinetry. This one has the plinth block that has to get notched around the baseboard. And I'm wondering to myself why I didn't notch this plinth block like I did the other ones in the great room before joining these together and sand them off the paint. Because now I got to stop and do this. That's annoying. Okay, those outside casings are kind of all prepped and just kind of sitting there for now until I feel like actually installing them. I'm going to work on these inside ones next. So you can see this will have to get notched around the countertop, but there's also something else that's happening here. The underside of all of the countertop gets this 3/4 cove, which is going to be up in here. So the casing can get notched around this as well. Okay, all 4 casings are basically prepped and ready to go. I'm just going to leave them sitting in their dry for now. I'll install them later on when we're further along in the project and I'm ready to like deal with the jams or whatever, but at least all the work to get them fit and ready to go is done. And since I was working on this yesterday, the stone guys stopped by and they were able to install the sills up in here in the windows, so this looks awesome. And with this here, I can actually install the trim for these windows. So the first thing I'm going to do is install the head casing, which is right here. And I'm going to do basically the same thing as I did on the other head casings. I'm going to domino it into the bandboard to keep the reveal consistent. As you look down the length of it, I can tell there is a bit of a wave in the wall. So if I attach them independently, the reveal could show that wave a little bit, and I don't really want that. And then I'll also pop the some domino holes in for the casings to go up into it, and then we can slap it up there onto the wall. So of course this isn't going to be easy. First off, my head casing has a nice bow in it, which isn't a big deal, but the bigger problem is that this window is significantly higher than the other two. The other two have a decent reveal. It's kind of tapering down a little bit, but that's because this got a bow in it. But I got my 3/16 on both these two windows, and then on this one, the jamb is like up behind the head casing by at least a 1/16. So I need to get a 1/4 inch here somehow. I think that maybe because I cut the bottom jambs out, I might be able to like tweak this top jamb with a pry bar and push it down, and that might get me something. The other thing I'm going to do, I think, is just plane a taper into this, or basically plane out the bow so that this side kind of comes up and the head casing is actually sitting on here, not level, at a bit of a diagonal. That should help get more of this one showing. It's never easy. I thought this was going to be fast. Oh, all right, let's see what we can do with this. I don't think that really moved at all. Nope. Okay, I think this is as good as it's gonna get. Now to the point, if I take more off of here, this one grows even more. I have 3/16, a 1/4 inch, and about 1/8 of an inch. And I think that's going to be right where it's going to be. So I'm going to get this thing installed right where it is now, or something. So for both of these side casings, the jambs are sticking out proud of the level of the sheetrock. So if I install this thing tight on here, it rolls back, and you can really tell down here that it is kind of tapered back that way. So what I'm going to do is fur it out from the wall. I got my shims here to figure out how much it needs to come out. That's 3/16, and it actually makes it nice and straight here. And I'm in line up top. And the gap here, it doesn't matter because again, this is all tile. So I have the thickness of the tile which will cover any gaps over here. And I'll make sure it actually looks nice down here instead of being all crooked looking and weird. Or I could have taken the time to shave the jambs down, but nope. I'm just going to loosely drop in these bottom ones for now. I have to reattach the crank mechanisms. So there's those windows all trimmed out, and I think that makes a pretty big difference. As you're looking at the front of the kitchen, you actually have some trim around the windows. And we got our casings all set up in here. So the last thing on the list for this time is going to be to finish up this corner here in the pantry. So I have my extended pieces here back from the paint shop. They can get ripped to width and then installed in this wall, and then we can go across on this wall. I'm going to miter the two pieces here at the corner, and I'm probably going to add a chamfer on this corner so that kind of matches the chamfer detail on the V-groove, so it looks like the paneling wraps around the corner, which it does. Yeah, that takes care of that in here. So that is all the trim for this whole tiny little room. So much stuff. And that is, we're going to end this one. I got all that done. And next time on the trim adventure, we'll be getting into the crown. So we'll make and install all of this, and we'll deal with this. And we'll end up doing all the finished painting in here as well. So that's going to do it for this one. Thank you as always for watching. I greatly appreciate it. If you have any questions or comments on the kitchen build, the home renovation, remodel, whatever we're calling it, anything back in the shop, please feel free to leave me a comment. As always, I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have. And until next time, happy woodworking. Butt slap.